Well, we do have to begin, I think, Chris, with our quarterfinal catch up with that Djokovic Alcaraz match, because
Ugh.
it was the match we were all looking forward to, popcorn at the ready. And I have to say, I think I nailed my prediction for this one. I said Djokovic in four, and that is what happened. He did win in four sets, coming from a set down, maintaining his record over Alcaraz on hard courts and getting the job done despite an injury that looked like at one stage he was on his way out.
It did, didn't it? It was very strange to see, actually. The way he was able to come back from what looked like after losing that set might be, the end of it. I thought it might go quite quickly, or maybe he wouldn't complete the match. And was able to find another level. I think what was quite interesting was he said that the drugs kicked in. When I say drugs, I should say not performance enhancing drugs. I believe that these are absolutely fine, of course. So no one kind of jump on that, but very much a case where he played himself into the match. I think he's maybe surprised himself physically. I'm not sure he surprised you though, Kim.
No, I think we've seen this many times before where he's looked kind of down and out, was struggling with injury, with movement, and then he's just kind of given himself a bit of time, taken some,
God mode,
painkillers, gone into, God and goat mode,
goat
and
mode.
got through it. I mean, he did say if he'd have lost that second set that he didn't know if he would carry on playing, but he obviously got that second
Yeah.
set
That's not
and
very Andy Murray of him.
was
Andy must
able.
have said, you can't retire, you have to play five, and you have to finish at 3 a.m.
I mean, Andy Murray knows what it's like to play long 5 set matches with a metal hip. So I think that
Yes.
might have, instilled something extra in Djokovic. Although, we have seen it before when Djokovic has got an injury concern. He's managed to get through the match and, used his innate talents to help him do that. And I mean, going 2 sets down to Alcaraz, I think would have been, something to come back from. But equaling it up, I think that gave him the hope and the confidence. And yeah, had a second dose of the painkillers later on, and Bob's your uncle. He got through it. And yeah, it's not the first time we've seen this happen. I'm not surprised. I had him down for the semi-finals. I'm curious to see how we'll get on with Zverev in the next match. Whether this injury that he has sustained is going to continue and rear its head again, or whether
Mm.
it's kind of can be contained for now.
Yeah, we'll have to see, won't we? Because we've seen, Nadal famously won on one foot in Paris in 2022, had to have injections
Mm-hmm.
into that foot. I mean, you're able to, and what modern medicine's able to help you with is it can get you through, a couple more matches. Obviously, it's a lot harder at this sort of level and against the caliber of opponents that he will have to, well, beat if he has a chance of winning. Obviously, the world number two, Zverev in the next round. That might not be the most physical contest always if the big serving is big serving. Then Jannik Sinner, I mean, hugely physical that could get. I mean, obviously he had some physical issues early in the tournament. They seem to have gone away. So it does seem a little bit like if it is survival of the fittest, then some of the other sort of pretenders might have a chance of victory. But I mean, you can't count out Djokovic in any situation. And I think this really did just make that point that don't forget about him. And, Tony Jones, don't forget about him. He is not irrelevant in any way. He's very much relevant. And he's taking out a player who's won 2 slams last year, beaten him in 2 Wimbledon finals. And I think it was a real statement win because this was sort of the time when people are saying, will he win another one? I'm not saying he's going to win another one, but he's definitely right up there with chances.
Yeah, he's definitely, don't count me out yet because I can still defeat, these youngsters on this stage. And he's now in his 12th men's semi-final at the Australian Open here. Obviously, he's won 10 of those
Yeah.
previous 11. So he's got a pretty good record. And he's, interestingly, only the second male or female in the Open era to have reached 50 singles semi-finals at a single Grand Slam event. So Chris Evert being the leader of that at with 52. So just shows his absolute dominance at this tournament.
I thought
So
you meant by that he's had 50
oh
semi-finals at the
no, sorry,
Australian
I mean
Open.
overall, yeah.
Yeah.
Not
I was
just
like,
not
wow,
just
like
Australian Open.
in doubles, mixed doubles
Yeah,
maybe?
sorry, no,
Yeah.
my bad. Yeah, just in Grand Slams in general.
Oh wow.
Which doesn't surprise me,
Well, Chris
of
Evert,
course.
wow. That's quite the
Yeah,
record. I'm not sure it'll be around too
phenomenal.
much longer.
And Djokovic going into the semi-final against Zverev. We'll get on to Zverev in a bit, but he does have a winning head-to-head against Zverev. It's 8-4. They last played it in a Grand Slam here 4 years ago. So, he's got historically an advantage over Zverev. They've won their last encounter. I think they haven't played since 2023, which was Cincinnati outdoor hard. So yeah, I think it really rests on the injury with Djokovic, if it's something that he's going to be able to continue with, or whether it was actually quite a serious one and he just, was able to get through the Alcaraz match. But is there a long-term impact? I'm not sure.
Well, we will have to see. Hopefully, kind of the extra sort of recovery time that they have until Friday, I believe that match will be. So they have a bit more time. It might be an evening session as well. That might also help physically, potentially. I also think that yeah, I mean, the time is what you need, unfortunately. And you don't get much time at slams, but you do get a rest day. And because of the nature of the women's semi-finals being played tomorrow, he has got that extra day. So it could make a difference. I think with the Zverev clash, I think if you're Zverev, you have to prepare for Djokovic on all cylinders, irrespective of this. And the biggest thing is probably actually the mental side of things. I mean, if Djokovic is taking to the court, you have to expect he will complete that match. And I think for the Zverev match, which we'll talk about now, I mean, it really did come down to who has the strongest mental capacity, who is the mentally more strong, because set points for Tommy Paul in both, Zverev came through them. Quite often we've seen him not get better as matches go on, maybe miss an opportunity at some of the later points of slams. So, I mean, if Djokovic is on the court and physically fit, I think we probably would all most likely pick Djokovic based on his performance. But I mean, Zverev seems like maybe he's turned a new page in converting those set points and saving those set points.
Yeah, his match against Tommy Paul, he actually was set point down in the first two sets, but came through, saved those points, won the tie breaks pretty comfortably. So those first two sets really could have gone either way. He, clutch tennis to get through that, to save the set point, and then dominate those tie breaks, and then drop the third, then back to dominating in the fourth, like to get it done 6-1. So not playing the greatest tennis, Tommy Paul, a tricky opponent there. Although I think Tommy Paul did have a 2-0 head-to-head against Zverev. Zverev had never actually beaten him before. But Zverev's going to have to be in that kind of mode against Djokovic. Any opportunities he's going to have to take, because, Djokovic is not a player that you can afford to waste your chances against. So, yes, I mean, Zverev played fantastic at the semi-final stage, I think, last year, and then obviously lost from two sets up as well. So I don't know if that will be playing on his mind, having got to the same stage 12 months later. He'll be wanting to avoid a sort of falling through the net again. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting clash with Djokovic. And I think Zverev, has been kind of under the radar this tournament. We haven't spoken an awful lot about him. He's just kind of been getting the job done relatively straightforward, aside from the set points against Tommy Paul.
Mm.
But Tommy Paul, he's into the top 10 after his tournament here. So although he lost, he's entering the top 10. So fantastic tournament still from him.
Yeah, really fantastic. You do just think, will he also be able to make that break and go a bit further in slams? He's had semi-final before down under, I believe. And with Zverev, as you say, like you can only beat the player in front of you. That's all he can do, and that's what he has been doing. So it will be a bit of a different test when you play against, the goat of tennis, Novak Djokovic. But as you say, like it wasn't the cleanest. 44 winners, 56 unforced errors, a bit patchy at times. But for Tommy Paul, I think this is probably a match where he will look back and think, I could have won in 4 sets, or I could have won in 3 sets even, because he had set points in those first 2 sets and then won the next 6-2. So the match that got away for him, but for Zverev, he's doing enough. He's getting through. And I mean, he's got a good shot at potentially, well, he's still trying to get that first title. And I think that's probably why we're not talking about him more, because he's obviously getting on a little bit now. He's no longer the junior that he once was, or the promising youngster. So maybe that's why we're not talking about it so much, because he hasn't got that slam yet. Whereas if he had one, obviously we'd be saying this could be number 2 for him. Whereas we're really not sure at this point if that will come.
Yeah, it's still a big if, isn't it? Don't have full confidence when it gets to the crunch end of slams that he can go all the way. I mean, one thing that I did want to mention that happened in the match against Tommy Paul was I don't know if you saw this, Chris, or if any of our listeners did, but they had to stop play because of a feather on the court. So the umpire, Nacho Forcadell, called a let just as Zverev was hitting a backhand, because there was a feather on the court, sort of floating down. And yeah, if Zverev was not happy, he was kind of up in the point, and a feather, it's kind of inconsequential. His argument was saying, he was saying there's feathers all over the place. They're light and fluffy. It's not going to cause any influence. So he wasn't particularly pleased with that decision. But do you think that was the right call by the umpire, Chris?
Oh, Kim, you put me on the spot. I
Would
do
you have
know
carried on?
you are partial to a sort of a pigeon moment at Roland Garros, and quite often they don't call them, do they? I mean, the audience are very distracted. I think for this one, if he said if it was a plastic bag, the umpire said, or something else very light and inconsequential, you still would cause the point to stop and you'd have to replay it. So I do understand that side. I also do understand the fact that if it's not affecting the rally, it's not affecting the rally as well. But then had Zverev lost the rally, maybe he'd have said, "Oh, this came on the court. You have to play a replay." So I think you have to make this call. If you see it, you have to call it. It does seem a little bit ridiculous, but so does Zverev saying there are a million feathers on the court. Because I had a little look. I think there were about three, and not on the actual court. So we'll have to see. But I think it was probably the right call. But I do think it does make for wonderful sort of media fodder of like feather stops play. It just makes it seem like tennis is so fragile.
Yeah, and I don't think it was, let's say, a pivotal moment for the match.
Not one of those set points for Tommy
It
Paul.
wasn't on, set point or match point. Can you imagine
Yeah.
losing a Grand Slam title, for example, on a feather?
Honestly, so funny. Buddy, it's a feather. Are you insane because of a feather? Those quotes, you're just like, it actually, you can't believe it's real, but it very much was real. And turns out I agree with it.
Yeah, a very conscientious umpire, I think, taking the rules seriously.
Yes.
And not taking any prisoners with them. So but yes, so Djokovic will be through to face Zverev, who came through Tommy Paul. Let's do predictions once we've discussed the other semi-final lineup that we've got, which we'll get onto in just a second. So Jannik Sinner against Alex de Minaur, that was today, and that was really very one-sided, very to plan for Sinner. He's got his 10th victory in a row over Alex de Minaur. Seems to be a bit of a bogeyman for de Minaur, and Sinner just looking very impressive yet again, despite the sickness that he had against Rune. He sort of seems back to business. What did you make of this match, Chris? Was there any hope at any time for Alex de Minaur during the course of this one?
Well, when we saw the draw, Kim, I think we all immediately thought there's no way that de Minaur could go past the quarterfinals because Jannik Sinner has just been that good at hard court slams. So I was a little bit surprised at just how one-sided it was. I thought Alex had been playing some really great tennis. I thought we might have like a tie-break set, a 7-5. But I mean, Sinner was moving really well and he was hitting really, really big. And I think that's kind of the worst nightmare for someone like de Minaur. If he can't get that first strike in, he's just going to play runabout at the back of the court. And it just teed it up perfectly for Sinner to really just, tee off on some of those shots. So definitely a shame for Alex. Still the furthest he's gone at his home slam, which is something that you have to commend. I do think the fact that Katie Boulter already flew out made me think that maybe she didn't think he would win this one either, because if you thought that your partner, who is obviously Australian, might be in with a chance of winning the Australian Open, you probably wouldn't have booked that flight, Kim.
I'm surprised she didn't stay, actually.
It's just one day, surely.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I know he was joking about he needed to get, more prize money to pay for the wedding and stuff like that. But
maybe he got enough and she was like, great, I'll go look at a venue.
Yeah, I've got to go check it out. Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I'm sure they've probably still got enough to have a lovely wedding. But
yes.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? I don't know where Alex Minaur can kind of work to kind of try and turn these around. This matchup is just not good for him when Sinner's, especially in this form. He's, in fact, I think Sinner's only ever dropped one set to Alex de Minaur, so it's very comfortable for Sinner.
It's giving
so he
Gael
wasn't particularly challenged, was he?
Monfils Djokovic, isn't it? It's giving
18 very, very
0 is that one, I think.
And I mean, these guys are going to be playing a lot against each other still to come in their career, so this could be up and up and up if Alex de Minaur doesn't sort it out. But Sinner does become the youngest man to reach consecutive semi-finals at the Australian Open since Rafa did it in 2008 and 2009. So he's backing up his title from last year and making his way deep into this year's. And he's also broken, I think, well, not broken, equaled a record set by Federer and Nadal for the fewest matches taken to reach 20 wins at the Australian Open since 2000. So when you start to put yourself in the record books along with the likes of the big three names, you know that you're doing something right, aren't you?
You
So
are.
it's just too good, I think. And yeah, seemed to be okay with the heat this time around. I think obviously having a late night match helped with that. But he will face Ben Shelton in the other semi-final. Shelton coming through against Lorenzo Sonego in 4 sets. Shelton now into his second semi-final. He did reach one back at the US Open in 2023. So it's been about 18 months since he's been at this stage. And I mean, we haven't really been speaking too much about Ben Shelton. I feel like he's just been coming nicely through the draw. Sonego, not the most difficult opponent. Not being impolite there. I just it's not someone you'd perhaps expect to be playing against in a Grand Slam quarterfinal. But still, it wasn't all straightforward for Shelton. 4 sets, and I think he's going to need to play a bit better if he's going to have a chance against Sinner. What do you think, Chris?
I think that's very accurate. It will need to be a hell of a lot better because we all know that Jannik Sinner, I mean, his record as world number one is quite something. It's actually very intimidating. So hopefully Ben is the sort of character that will go out there, throw caution to the wind and just leave everything on the court. I can see that being very much his style of play. I can't see him being intimidated, but I do think it does take a certain environment for him to bring out his best tennis. I think he plays really great tennis on home soil, especially. It's where he's won some of his titles. It's also a place where he's had his best result at a slam, at the US Open, obviously, prior to this. But I mean, his draw hasn't been the hardest. He did play Massetti, which he upset in 4 sets previously. He's obviously a slam semi-finalist previously at Wimbledon. So he has beaten a couple of big opponents, but Monfils withdrawing obviously helped him, and him knocking out Fritz probably also helped Ben Shelton because that might not have been the best matchup for him. But if you're Yannick Sinner, I think you're rubbing your hands together at the prospect of this one because it's probably not who you were expecting to see in the semi-final of a slam.
Yeah, and I think with Shelton's run, I think he has played some great tennis, but has been quite lucky with his draw, perhaps, and with like Monfils retiring. So I don't know if his level is good enough to challenge Yannick Sinner. He also benefited, I think, from Sonego getting really tight at the end of the match in the quarterfinals. So yeah, he's going to have to go some. But Ben Shelton, he is back in the top 15 now as a result of this win. He's not far off the top 10. I think he will be in the top 10 potentially if he wins this title, but that's going some. He's going to have to go some to do that. But oh God, I sound like I'm really negative, aren't I? But I'm being realistic, I suppose.
Well, think about it as like we're just giving our opinion, Kim. We believe anyone
He's
could
not
do
listening, is
anything,
he?
but we've definitely learned that quite often they don't.
You can do anything, you just can't do everything.
Yeah,
I think
true.
that's what I keep hearing lately.
Yeah. Is that
Interestingly,
your performance reviews?
yeah, we're giving Ben Shelton his PDR right
Yeah,
now.
it's right now
Um,
360.
yeah, he has been calling out the Australian media though as well. Obviously following on from the comments about Djokovic by Tony Jones. Ben Shelton has been saying that other players have sort of had disrespect shown at them as well by the Aussie media. So, would you say there's credence to that? Is there something going around in the water down under that's meaning the media are being a bit vicious, maybe?
That is an interesting question. So I used to be based in Australia for a period of time, and I definitely think the language and way they talk about things, their humor is very specific to Australia. It's a lot more in your face and a lot more abrasive. Not necessarily in a bad way, but I do think it's quite different from the American sense of humor. And I think Brits and Aussies tend to get along quite well, but there is still that bit of friction around some of the sarcasm or some of the things that they might say that we wouldn't. So I do think the nature of Australian commentary is a bit like that. I also think having, high profile players like Nick Kyrgios being as vocal as they are doesn't necessarily help the Aussie cause. But then you can point to such wonderful, respectful members of the Aussie tennis contingent like Ash Barty, or other people like Sam Stosur. There are so many who are so great at their jobs. It's just a shame that so many of the people that do say these things are people who have the biggest platform.
Yeah, maybe cultural differences then with Ben Shelton's opinion there and sort of rubbing up against some of the Aussie media. Let's have a look at Sinner and Shelton. Sinner has a 4-1 winning head to head against Shelton. Shelton actually won their very first encounter, which was back in 2023. Said that year really weirdly there at Shanghai Masters. Where Shelton did get the win. But since then, it's been one-way traffic with Jannik Sinner winning all of their encounters. So, yeah, it's going to have to go some, I think, for Shelton to turn that around. So, Chris, we'll come to the end of the first half.
Yes.
We've been looking at the men's quarters. Got our men's semi lineup: Shelton versus Sinner, Djokovic versus Zverev. Going to ask you now for your predictions. Who is coming through? Who's our final going to be between?
I'd love to surprise you. I don't think I will. I think I will say Djokovic and Sinner.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
do you think?
So I think originally I had,
Djokovic
did I
winning the whole
have,
thing.
was that my main prediction?
I
Because
think that
for
was your
correct to
main
say, I've
prediction. We
gone
do so many
semi-final.
predictions,
So
listeners. One of them
I know
must
I
be right.
can't keep track. I'm going to say the same, Sinner, Djokovic. I'm going to say Sinner in 3, Djokovic in 4 for the
I actually
semis.
probably would have gone the same. Maybe I'll throw in something to be different and say Sinner in four.
Oh, okay. Shelton's getting a set, maybe. But yeah, listeners, let us know what you think. Let us know on social media. We'd love to know your thoughts.